Once my resume ended up on the desk, I don't remember if it was a Mandy ad, a Craigslist, something. I know that once my resume ended up on the desk, I know that Jason Crothers saw it and recognized it and said I'd worked with that guy before and he was good. It was a totally new group of filmmakers for me. Aside from, I didn't know that Jason was involved until later. And it's always nice to see, it's always nice to see a familiar face on the call sheet. You can only operate as fast as the flow of information that you're getting. And the information starts with the director who, blocks the scene with the actors. Then from that blocking, the DP and the director have their conversation on how they're going to cover it. And then from that information that's really when I get a chance to finally carve out a game plan for how production sound is going to cover that scene. Because we have to work around those elements. And I kind of knew that, okay, averaging 8, 9, 10 pages a day and shooting in some practical locations, that there were going to be some things to watch out for. You know who should be talking to who. I know it should start with the director and get to the DP. The DP's they're gonna hash out the blocking with the actors, and then the DP's gonna eventually have his conversation with the gaffer about how they're gonna light it, because me as a production sound person, I have to work around all those elements, and you have to do it in a seamless kind of way. So there might be times where you're standing, where you thought was a perfect place for you to stand as a boom operator, well, because of the shape of the room, the key light's got to go there and the flag's got to go here to keep it off this wall. And you understand that that's a photography consideration. And so you just have to figure out another way to do it, and it's not personal. They're not trying to, they're not trying to, the DP's just not trying to, screw you, but he is, he's got to shoot the thing in the limited space that he has. And so that's why, as a sound crew, you want to be flexible as to how many ways you can get the dialogue coverage. I was using, 2 lavs and a boom. Well, I'd have those coming into my mixer, and then from there I'd have a headphone out that was going to me, to Pixie, and to the director, the scriptee, and whoever else wanted to listen on a Comtech, so that way they can kind of hear what's going on. And then I was recording all of those signals plus a mix signal in my internal recorder, and then I was sending my main outs were routed to a Sennheiser transmitter that was sending to a couple of receivers. I had one on each camera, and so I think I had track 1 running to A camera and track 2 running to B camera, if I'm not mistaken. And we might have gone hardline for some of that, where I was sending 2 tracks to 1 camera. A little Sennheiser receiver, very lightweight, battery powered. A set of double A's in there would last most of the day. I'd change them out at like hour 10, and they were fine. And that really helped. That helped our workflow a lot. The less cabling you have to do in a 9-page day, the better. You need to wrap your brain around, other things, like the logistics of covering, these 3, 4, sometimes 5 characters in 2 cameras. You have to wrap your brain around those logistics. And so I just chose not to. I didn't want to have Pixie occupied running cables. I needed her head with me so we could concentrate on how we're gonna cover this stuff. And so that it proved to be a good choice in the end. When you're shooting 8 or 9 pages a day, this movie was a little different because they were wearing the same wardrobe the whole time. On other movies, it's sometimes access to the actor after they're in wardrobe is a little sliver of time. It's they get dressed, they go into makeup, and then it's straight onto the set for a rehearsal. We have to kind of tug the AD's coattails and say, hey, we've got to put a lav on them. And when you're doing a lower budget movie where you're shooting a lot more pages, especially when they have the same outfits on all the time, we opted to kind of wait and see what the camera shot was, because we knew the 2 people that we could put lavs on, we could put them on fairly quickly. But we wanted to see the blocking, and we wanted to see what the cameras were seeing before we pulled the trigger on whether or not we had to put lavs on them. And we only put lavs on if we had to. And once we saw the shot, we'd pretty much know between Pixie and I, we put our heads together, and we'd pretty much know, oh, we can get that, because we were always set up to do two boom coverage. Most two-person sound crews, you'll have a mixer working from a cart, and then you'll have a boom operator on set that's booming. We approached it a little differently. I was still on a bag rig. So at any given time, I could boom and mix, and Pixie could have a wireless second boom. She could cover another grouping of people, or she could cover the background, I could cover the foreground. So we could still function as boom operators and not lose the capability of mixing at the same time. And that's one of the things that I don't know that many mixers that do that. I know for this particular production, it really saved us because it left us that much more flexible to have two booms. And as soon as we see what the particular shot's going to be, then we pull the trigger on the lavs if we need them. But generally, putting a lav on somebody, even though we could do it quick, you have to deal with an actor or an actress that's in their zone at that moment. They're about to shoot a scene. They're thinking about their lines. They're thinking about their delivery, and we wanted to spare them us having to get up in their business and put a microphone on them. So if we can leave it as smooth as possible for them and for all the departments, then we did it that way. There's certain things that a lav will work with wardrobe wise and won't work with. I'll use a Rycoat overcover. It's like a little fuzzy thing that you can stick on top of it that keeps the shirt from rubbing directly against it. And as long as the blocking is not too physical, where you have, sometimes, if you have people coming up to kiss each other, their bodies are going to touch, or they're going to pet or do something. You're done at that point. The challenge in lav miking was definitely on Sarah, and she was wearing the pink sequin party dress the whole time, where we basically saw, we love to hide mics right here, but we could see all of that the whole show. So she was a challenge, and so I know Pixie, my second in the sound crew, we were always kind of on guard as to how we were going to cover her, and still be flexible with all the other processes going on the set.
The quality of the production recording for Two Million Stupid Women, for the most part, was good. They definitely had their problems. It wasn't all perfect. The biggest problem was probably associated with the fact of the lead, Melissa, the character Melissa's outfit certainly didn't leave any great places to mount a microphone. So a lot of the scenes where they were walking in a distance and coming towards the camera, or walking around or moving around, did not lend itself to holding a boom mic into the camera. So they had to use wireless mics and had to use lavalier mics. And when you use definitely wireless mics, it is, you have those problems that can come in, like static and interference and just general noise.
Ruffling of the clothes.
Then that would be associated with the lav mics. Yeah, the wireless mics were definitely electronic interference and then physical interference from the lavalier mics. And Melissa's outfit particularly had to sort of hide the mic within the costume, and then she moves around.
We were very on guard about Sarah's coverage, and we wanted to, since there was really not a good place to hide a lav mic on that dress, or the mic pack. It's not just the little mic here. It's that the transmitter you got to put somewhere on their body where it doesn't show. We were very guarded about how we were going to cover her, and we were always on guard about that. And luckily she was good at projection, shall we say?
Come here. Okay.
On my birthday?
Okay. We are here for margaritas.
And not give me so much as a card? What?
Katie, in contrast, was not nearly as loud as Sarah. So Katie, and she had kind of a dainty outfit on as well. We didn't want to lav her unless it was totally necessary. And but we did have some challenges in picking her up because she's a very soft-spoken person. She's very, just the character itself that she was playing was, a character that was seeking, and it was very, she's a very self-conscious character. So she wasn't as boisterous and woohoo party as Sarah was. So sonically, from a sound perspective, she's totally different. And, having to mix all three of those sources, in the same environment usually was a bit of a challenge.
One other problem was Anna. wore a the other female lead in the movie had a lavalier mic on, but she had a metal chain necklace around her, and so she would move around, and this metal chain necklace is moving right next to the mic.
Mark was usually pretty easy to lav. His wardrobe was a button-down polo is pretty easy thing to lav. The type of mic that works best, we do what we call a button sneak, which is where the lav is hidden right behind a button, but it's actually sticking out in plain view. It's just behind the button. You'd have to see it if you were looking down on them. You could see an extra little circle in there. But most of the time when they go close enough, close up enough where you could see it, it's out of frame. Now here's the fun part. This is transport surgical tape. Now we get to tape the wire to his chest.
Do you shave before? No, I don't need to. This takes it all off.
And the only problem with that mic is that it has no wind protection whatsoever. So once you get outside, any slightest, even the actor breathing, you pick that up sometimes. Luckily, they can't breathe and talk at the same time. So that gets us out of some trouble. But and then for other setups, there's a mic called the Sanken COS11, which is what we put right under the shirt, which you wouldn't be able to see, but it has a really aggressive high-end EQ curve on it, and with the right protection from the fabric noise, it really picks up nicely under a layer of clothing or two.
I'd have to say the other biggest problem was the interiors of the cars. And again, not so much the result of a bad recording, but just the tone inside a car is a very difficult place to get a good sound. It sounds very boxy and reflective, and all the glass in there reflects the sound around, and it's hard to get a good sound in there. And then you're usually like, in certain scenes, they were parked in the middle of Hollywood Boulevard, and cars going by and noise, and people are talking, and some scenes they're getting very quiet and intimate with each other and talking, and it's difficult. It's difficult to get a good recording in those situations.
The heaviest RF day for us dealing with RF was the Thursday night we were doing the Shotmaker stuff, doing all the driving shots. We were driving a big loop through Hollywood, and that part of town, there's a lot of news outlets there. There's a lot of just police around on their very powerful radios they have in their car. So every now and then, going through certain intersections, we'd get hit a few times, but it was usually very quick. Just a little bit of static here and there would kind of just, and that's it. It did get on some dialogue, but I felt like we were doing enough takes that we had stuff to cut with. If it would have been a situation where we only did something once or twice, I'd probably tell the director at that point, look, we only have maybe one or two of these that are usable. And but luckily I didn't have to do that. I mean, they were really good about doing a series of takes and going over and over the dialogue, and so I would just try to make a note on the sound report that is in fact what you're hearing is static, and that's where it came from. But that was our only day where we had a little bit of an issue, and it really wasn't that much. I mean, I've had far worse days. I've had days on even industrial films where we walk into a certain type of boardroom and just everything dies. You cannot get from 5 feet away. You can't get your wireless to work. There's just something going on there. You only get trouble from like the squad car type radios that run on multiple frequencies, and they also send out. They have the computers in the car that send out broadband type information to and from the police station. So those are the only ones that have ever given us problems. But it's never like the motorcycle cop that's riding with you, which we had a couple, I think, on the Shotmaker days. And that was like our most official day on set, it felt like. Considering the night before we were running through a neighborhood totally stealing stealing a location like Mission Impossible. Yes, we got it, score, run away. You're thinking about the entire scene, and you have kind of a checklist in your mind. We already obviously if cameras are going to see it, then we're going to cover it. But sometimes, the decision might be made by the director. Oh, we don't need to get a close-up of this line. She's there in the background, and we hear her. That's fine. So those are the things that are important to us. Those are the situations where you'd be more likely to go to a lav or to go to a wild line or something like that. It just all depends on how the director sees it playing in the shot. There's some things that are scripted as off-screen where somebody said a certain line, but you hear it, but you're not going to see it. So we have to make sure that at some point we got that line clean. And so in essence, we're our own little script supervisor. we check off everything we caught in a medium or a tight. I try to, when I have time, I like to write down what cameras were doing when we were shooting the scene. Sometimes I don't have time to do that. The sound report is, generally to let the audio editor, or the video editor in that case, it gives them a picture of what was going on, on the ground when we shot it. And, I realized that video editors now, with budgets getting smaller and the workflow getting more streamlined, I've noticed a lot more video editors are starting to do sound design as well. So the most information you can give them, the better. And that is, for me, is not just sound. That's for picture as well. Because there'll be some times when, a B camera goes down to reload and they don't want to wait. So they'll roll it on A camera only. And so even in my slate at the head of each take, I'll say A camera only, or I'll try to make note of that, even though the guy on the slate might say, B camera only marker, and clap it. I'll still, the more information that's out there for them later, just the more clear of a picture they have when it comes to editing the scene. And so all that information helps. I like to try and put, A camera's going tighter. When we're moving that fast, and sometimes we're even shooting in a series, where they'll grab multiple sizes in one take. If you have a script supervisor, they may not have time to write all that down, and information is flying at such a fast pace, they may not have even heard, or they may not have had a chance to write it down. So it's just like the Department of Redundancy department. Just write it down on the sound report. Even if it exists somewhere else, it doesn't matter. If I have 2 seconds to jot it down, then I'll do it. It helps. Because I've sat in the editing chair and with no information whatsoever, and it's really difficult, and you think you hear what you think you hear, but you're not sure. And that sound report is the thing that will clarify it for you. And that way you know that, okay, in this scene, the signals seem to change up a little bit. Well, you go to the sound report and go, oh, Sarah's lav is now on this track and not this track, because now she's the primary focus of the scene and not. So I tried to keep the primary focus of the shot on track 1, because I knew that would get recorded with me, and it would also get recorded directly to camera. So I know for dailies, for the people watching dailies later, that's the sound that's on camera is what they're going to be using for a reference. And I wanted to make sure that, whatever the primary focus of that shot ended up on channel 1. Now that does leave a bit of a headache for the editor later, because it's not like, oh, boom is always on track 1. It's not like that. It changes for the editor. But that was a choice that I had to make early on, knowing that anybody who's going to watch dailies, they need to know what they're hearing. There's some shows that actually have the budget and have the manpower in audio in the post side to sift through, extra tracks and extra coverage. And but what I've noticed on lower budget shows, you've really got to do as much for the next stage of the process as you can. Because that will make their lives easier in post. And it's post is still expensive even on a lower budget project. Rooms cost money. There's a lot of costs, and if you can cut down what it costs for an editor to evaluate what you're sending them, then that way they can flow right into their next stage of production a lot easier.
If the sound man documents on the sound reports that, all of his takes and any problems that he had and any notes that are going on, and, takes meticulous notes assigning his tapes to those sheets and to the script. And also if your script supervisor takes a good, what they call a line script. And a line script is basically taking a script and drawing a vertical line on there associated with a take. So if you have 4 pages of a script that they're shooting at the same time, take 1 might be this much dialogue, take 2 might be this much dialogue, take 3 they might have gone farther in the take, while take 4 starts down here and goes over here. So it allows you to look at a take on a sheet of paper and see all these takes, and look at that line script and see exactly which pieces of dialogue were covered within that take. And that's very helpful, because sometimes
saves time.
It saves you time when you're looking for a word. Oh boy, there's a noise on top of this word. I can go over here and look at the script, and wherever that word is in the script, wherever a line is on that, we know that take is somewhere, exists. That if there are 5 lines across that, 5 vertical lines across that horizontal line of dialogue, we know that there are 5 takes that word was set in. So we can go find those 5 takes, and we know that somewhere in those 5 takes that word is in there, and we might find the word we're looking for.